Hey everyone, welcome back to the Neurodivergent Entrepreneur Podcast. I am joined today by a repeat guest, Mandi Dixon, who's a licensed professional counselor, EMDR therapist, and ADHD executive function coach, specializing in the intersection of ADHD and perimenopause in women. She's a member of the Menopause Society and the International Society for the Study of Women's Sexual Health, and her work has been featured in USA Today, Good Morning America. Mandi is based in Allen, Texas, where she sees clients and is currently writing her first book on ADHD and midlife hormonal health. Welcome back to the show. I am excited to have you on because today what we're going to talk about for all of you listening is special interests, but especially within the realm of Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and all of those fantasy worlds and realms. And last night, for context, was the finale of the season 3 House of the Dragon series. And I know we're going to really dive into that and just the importance of having these things in our lives. I think that is really foundationally a big part of this. And as I sit in my office, I think about the fact that I am surrounded by stuff like memorabilia, posters, pictures, photos, stuffed animals, books, images of my special interests. Like Anthony Bourdain is behind me. I'm staring at enormous amounts of Lord of the Rings, Ted Lasso, Red Panda, House of the Dragon, travel. Like it's just all around me. And I think as an autistic person, special interests are often gateways into the autistic soul. And when we start to find these things that we connect with on such a cellular level, we can kind of build like entire worlds around it, relationships, senses of connection and regulation and belonging. So, okay, House of the Dragon.
Yes.
Finished last night. Controversial probably for a lot of you watching, and there are going to be spoilers. So if you haven't watched, you may not want to listen to this episode. Take it away, Mandi. Why is this season series like, what is this world doing for you right now? Because when I mentioned it on Instagram, you were immediately like, oh, I would love to talk about this.
Well, I'll say I was never a Game of Thrones fan, and I just want to say that I have not read the books. So
Yep,
I would see it on HBO and think, and I'd find myself like lost in it. But just would be just a random episode or whatever when it was live coming out. But I knew, this is the ADHD in me, that it was so big. It was so much, so many seasons, and it was so, and the fans were hardcore. And I thought, I just don't have the capacity to consume that. So I stayed away from it. But I always was very intrigued by it. And I, just one day I was like, you know what, I'm going to go in and I'm going to watch it. You know what I think happened is House of Dragon came out. I watched a couple episodes of that, and that was the trigger. Was like, okay, now I'm going to go watch all of the Game of Thrones, the whole series. Yeah.
How long did it take you to, like, once you hit that point where you're like, oh, I got to go back and now I got to watch 8 seasons of Game of Thrones?
Few months, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not long. I mean, and I have children too. So I've had to only do it when they weren't around.
Have you rewatched it, or was it a one and done?
It was only once. So, but I'm very much want to go rewatch it. But I'll tell you what happened. Have you binged it like that?
Yes. So for you listening at home, I have PDA, or, what people would call pervasive drive for autonomy or pathological demand avoidance. So when everybody's saying to do something, my nervous system immediately shuts it down. And the first couple of years that Game of Thrones was out and it was this massive hit, and everybody's telling you got to go watch this show, you're going to love it. Like, you love Lord of the Rings, you would really enjoy this, and blah, 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 blah. My wife is like, come on, join me on this adventure every Sunday night. I'm like, no, I want nothing to do with this world. And then I started watching like season 7 while she was watching it out of my peripheral. I was like, oh man, this is fascinating. And then finally, I decided I should binge watch all of it before season 8 came out a couple of years ago. So I watched 7 seasons in the matter of like 2 weeks, and like just episode after episode after episode. And now, I hate to say this, but I have probably watched the whole series, oftentimes turning it off at season 8 because it was an atrocity, 50 plus times total.
Wow.
It's a problem.
It's intense. I know for myself, when I binged it like that, I was dreaming about it. I would, and of course, in the dreams, but then in reality, I noticed when, so funny, when someone would, say something that was upsetting or take a tone with, my instinct was just like to draw a sword, like put my hand down like I was going to draw my sword. It was so funny. And I definitely caught myself doing that. Just, you get so consumed into it. Yeah. And I think that may be why I haven't gone back and rewatched it, because I know how consumed I get with it.
For sure. Totally. I actually, like, over my shoulder, I'm going to, right here, you guys can't see it probably. My favorite character, and I'll ask you yours in a second, is in Game of Thrones is the Hound. And I think he's such a complex character where, like, in the beginning, so full of hate and anger and violence. And as the seasons go on and he and Arya develop a relationship and he becomes almost this like protector for her, such a beautiful, like, representation of, like, vulnerability and toxic masculinity. He died for her.
Yeah.
And he was willing to put himself in harm's way for her. And it was just, a really beautiful character arc, which they ruined a lot of them in Game of Thrones, if I'm being honest. So my wife got me this painting, which is a painting of the Hound and Arya in a field, and her face on Arya and my face on the Hound. So it's one of my favorite things in my office.
I love that. Absolutely.
Might be a tattoo that I get, actually, now that I say that out loud. That might be a next tattoo.
There you go.
Okay. So favorite character Game of Thrones for me, the Hound. I could go into a list of people I hated for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of dislikable characters, but the acting is so good that it makes it intriguing. So curious for you, like, did you have a favorite, least favorite?
I was always drawn to Bronn, not Bran, but Bronn.
Yeah.
And what is it? Bronn of the Black.
Yeah, Sir Bronn of the Blackwater. Yep.
Yeah, Blackwater. That's it. And I've tried to think about what it is about him, and it's hard to really nail down. I think he was never really fake with anyone. He was always just very open and honest about what and who he was, and didn't try to deceive anyone. It was kind of like, this is me and take it or leave it. And became a lord, I guess, at the end.
Yeah. I liked Bronn a lot. He was actually on my top 5. It was like Bronn, the Hound, Arya, Tyrion, and probably Tormund, the big red bearded wildling guy.
I liked him too.
But I like the characters that are very direct and straightforward. Like, what you see is what you get. And Bronn was definitely that, right? He was always like telling Tyrion, like, you pay me to kill people. You pay me to protect you. That's my job. I don't have any relational, like, sense of justice or duty here. I'm doing it for money because this is what I'm good at.
Yeah. There was no reading between the lines with him.
Right. There was no, like, ulterior motive or sneakiness, which there's a lot of in this series. And those are the characters, and not just in this series, in any series, that I often have a hard time with. Like, do you watch Ted Lasso at all?
No.
Okay. Nate, for those of you listening at home, another character that I have such a hard time with. It's the sneaky, ulterior motive, always scheming, plotting. And there's a lot of that in Game of Thrones. And it's, I think it's very well done. What about least favorite characters?
Least favorite, well, Cersei. I don't, she was one of those that was also very sneaky, very cunning.
Yeah.
Just not even though that she necessarily did a lot of the things herself. It's that she was the manipulator that stacked all the dominoes up. Yeah. I don't like.
Didn't like Cersei.
Yeah.
Did not like Ramsay Bolton.
No.
Was the epitome of a psychopath, like serial killer almost esque. Hated Joffrey, but I don't know a single person on planet Earth who liked him. Yeah. People took it a little too far, where they were like sending the actor lots of hate mail and death threats and like verbally assaulting him at Comic-Cons and stuff. Like, people, this is a fake character, y'all. This is not a real world event or experience. The kid seems like a very nice guy. He quit acting after that for a while because of it. It was like, fans are hardcore
And he did a
Um,
great job.
he did. I always think about that. Like when characters are that dislikable, the acting is top tier. So let's fast forward into this series that just ended. Dislikable characters, probably across the board for House of the Dragon, if you watched it. Sir Kristen Cole is the top of the list for a lot of you out there because of like toxic masculinity, because he got, dumped by Rhaenyra, and all of a sudden he's on this vengeance tour. He's constantly like trying to fight for honor, but in reality is just constantly self-absorbed and image obsessed. Did you like it? Did you like that character?
I did like him at first, but I will say personally, I do get swindled by that sometimes. So
Yeah.
that's a blind spot personally. But yeah, no, then I did see how he turned, and I liked that he was so, or a lot of people were able to see his true, I guess loyalty, which was to himself, and how high he could get in things.
He's one of those guys, like he's another, it was just a great acting job because he was so universally hated. Every single week after episodes, people are posting reels and gifs of like, please, Kristen Cole, just die today. We just want this to be over. And of course, he gets killed by a woman in like anticlimactic fashion. He thinks he's going to go out as this epic warrior and people are going to sing songs about him, and he's getting ready to battle. And all of a sudden he just gets shot by some, I can't remember her name right now, Black Alice, and just gets shot, killed. And it's like, all right, we're moving on from this. And I thought that was phenomenal.
I loved how he got shot first in his chest. So then he like could realize it, and then boom, right in the cheek, took him out.
And then it was just over. And it was like, all right, this guy's forgotten about instantaneously, and, had so much influence in what happened in this series, and so much harm done from his actions, all because he got spurned by a one-night stand with Rhaenyra while she was a teenager. It's like, how much narcissism can we have to think like she's going to have sex with you, and then all of a sudden she's just going to choose to leave the Iron Throne and the descendancy because you had a one-night stand, and now that sets you on a course of like destruction and plotting and scheming and trying to be her downfall.
That fractured ego.
Yeah, all in the blink of an eye. It was like, she made him feel important, and then all of a sudden he wasn't, and that he just couldn't handle that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of controversy around the characters in this show, Rhaenyra being like probably in the center of the controversy. For those of you who are watching at home or don't know much, she's the one who was promised to be the heir to the Iron Throne. It gets swept out from under her once her dad dies. Her brother becomes king instead. He's a dislikable, pretty horrible human being. And she ends up trying to take the throne back and ends up succeeding this season temporarily. People do not like her. People around her start to dislike her. And you had some thoughts about this when we were messaging before. So you were saying like you were seeing eldest daughter stuff. You were seeing like perimenopause stuff. Tell us about that.
Well, I see everything through perimenopause lens sometimes, but no, as this season was going on, I witnessed a lot of like people pleasing tendencies. She wanted to be the good. She wanted to be good, I guess is a pretty good way to say it. And, most eldest daughters they want to do the right thing. They want to take care of everyone. And I could see that she was desperately trying to do that, but you can't make everybody happy. She was, she had to put herself last in a whole lot of situations. And as a queen, you can't do that. And it was just a lot of conflict I could see with her. And I could just see that those people-pleasing tendencies coming out. And then it's like, with women that I see in my practice who have been people pleasers their whole life, a lot of them eldest daughters, you get to a point where you just snap, and it's almost, unmasking, and you become, people see you as being cruel. And doesn't she get named Rhaenyra the Cruel?
Yeah.
So I just wonder.
Books, they paint her very poorly.
Okay.
In the books, she's despised by basically everybody. Her reign is very short. But I agree with you. So all this people pleasing, all that pressure to be the perfect daughter, to honor the legacy, to do exactly what your father wants you to do, and then it all comes crumbling down because nothing goes to plan.
Yeah. And you could see she genuinely cared about the people. She was trying to hear their struggles, but like there wasn't an answer. There wasn't a good answer for everyone. And that can really take a toll on you if, in life, when you are an eldest daughter, often holding up the family and your family and everything. And there's just no way to make everyone happy.
Right. Yeah. And I think, a big protagonist in this story, her husband and uncle, a lot of incestuous stuff in the series.
Oh, yeah.
Is constantly asking her, like, take your power, use your dragons, burn it all down. And she's constantly saying, no, that's not who I want to be. It's not the kind of leader I want to be, which echoes a lot of what you see with Daenerys in Game of Thrones towards the end, where it's like, I don't want to be the leader and the queen of the ashes. But then inevitably, all of these people are out against you, right? Like the whole issue with House of Dragon is that a lot of the people who quote unquote bent the knee and swore fealty really don't want a woman in power. Exactly. They would rather have a horrible man who is horrific, has no care for the people he serves because he's a man. So there's a lot of patriarchy in this going on.
Yeah, that's what I noticed too. And that's something that Daenerys went through all of Game of Thrones. Is she was constantly having to fight not only just for her right to the throne, but it was mostly because she was a woman and kept being denied. So I saw a lot of that parallel. And I know that there's been instances where there's a mad king, but mostly that image becomes the mad queen. The woman goes mad, the woman goes crazy. And we see that in our world too. A woman can't just have a moment. No, she has to snap and become crazy.
Yep. Yeah. We're not looking at the outside influences or factors or how she wasn't set up for success from the start. She was really never set up for success from the moment she ascends and takes the throne. She's already dealing with a situation where all of the gold is out of the city. They have no resources. Everyone is conspiring against her, and she's meant to like keep it all together and be mature and be respectful and be judicious and be loyal.
And kind.
Be kind and be gentle while also being required to be vicious and aggressive and dominant. And it just doesn't mix in this very, very violent world of Game of Thrones lore.
Exactly. It's like I said, I haven't read the books, so I'm kind of interested to see what plays out. I typically try and go look for spoilers just because I'll get so curious, but I'm going to try really hard not to.
I mean, I do know it's coming, and I think we're in for a treat. Hopefully season 4 lives up to that hype. I felt like, aside from the finale last night, the last couple of episodes have been really slow and really drawn out. And I thought, man, this means they're going to have to rush, whatever happens next, because they were going over things that really are inconsequential. There's a lot of betrayal in these stories. There is a lot of backstabbing. There is a lot of power grabbing for people. It really does mirror a lot of what's happening in our country and just worldwide in politics and throughout history. It's oftentimes about who you know and who you have alliances with, and not necessarily if you're the best candidate for the job.
Exactly. Last night, my son, he's 9, he decided to watch the finale with me, and he's not into it. He doesn't really know what's going on, but he was sitting there with me, and so he would ask a question and I would have to pause it and answer the question, trying to explain what was going on. One thing he asked is, who's the bad guy? Is he a bad guy? I'm like, well, that's, have to look at what perspective you're looking at. Everybody in there thinks they're the good guy. They think the other guy's the bad guy. Yep. And he said, why, whenever Daemon was kind of storming the castle and Caraxes is there behind him. He said, why doesn't he just take his dragon and burn everything? I said, well, it's kind of like in our world, like a dragon is almost like a nuclear weapon. Like you can drop it, but everyone gets destroyed. And then everyone else sends their dragon and then we have no world. So it's kind of very similar to that. And, in the end, you saw what happened whenever, what is it, Ulf?
Yeah. The ultimate betrayal, right? Like,
and that's when the power gets into the absolute wrong hands. Stupid hands.
Yep. Exactly. So a lot to unpack with that. I agree 100%. Damon is trying so hard to exhibit restraint, right? Because Ormond in this episode is taking children and placing them at the front of the lines of the castle to try to influence the assault from happening so that they won't burn the castle because the kids are there. And Damon is trying really hard not to do that, to his credit. And then he just loses it. And he's just so desperate to end this. And Damon always has that like glimmer of hope or spark in his eye when he can be violent and when he can cause chaos. That's kind of his character in a nutshell. And I really loved him, his transformation of like being very self-centered to now being very loyal to his queen, who really doesn't want anything to do with him other than boss him around or give him a task when she feels like she is vulnerable. And he's my favorite character by far. I think Matt Smith, phenomenal casting for Damon, just like really, really good. I also, I really liked Roddy the Ruin, the guy from the north who's like, I'm down here to die for the Dragon Queen. That is my mission. I'm going to be excited to go out in a blaze of glory. And you got to see that happen. And that was pretty cool as well. A lot of bad things happened last night, but through the series, like you see a lot of things happening within the family systems. Alicent, right? Lying to Helena constantly and manipulating her and trying to influence her to make certain decisions that are more beneficial for Alicent than Helena in the long run. And Helena even says to her, like, how come you didn't marry me to anyone else other than my brother? Was it just so that you could keep power over me? And Helena was a wonderful character. I'm so happy she got so much airtime this season. Absolutely autistic-coded, like knitting, playing with insects, like having these deep dive knowledges about beetles and caterpillars. And like, I just love her character so much.
I mean, even Alicent described her as being sensitive. She's sensitive. She has to go outside and those sensitivities.
But it makes me sad when she's like, I just want to go out and see the moon. I just want to go out. I want to just raise chickens. Like that's what I want out of life. And gets caught up in the wrong family.
I know. She was way beyond any of them.
Yeah. Wisdom and dreamer and foresight into what could happen. A lot of like pattern recognition skills. Definitely just a very introverted human who wanted to spend time away from the chaos. And even called Rhaenyra on it last night in the final series of like, you're ugly. This place is ugly. Everything you're doing is ugly. I don't want anything to do with this. I do not want to be a part of this. And it's a sad ending for her for sure.
It is. And I felt like Rhaenyra did a good job of, I think she genuinely cared for Helena, but I think once she learned that Helena had visions and that she could see things, that's whenever she started using her. And that's, force feeding her to keep her alive, not only, for the baby as a pawn, but also just for her visions. And that was cruel.
It was tough to watch.
It was.
And you could see like Rhaenyra has changed, right? They did this thing this season where Rhaenyra, you're rooting for her. You're like, I want her to become the queen. She deserves it. She's fought so hard. She's been cast aside and disrespected. You almost, at the end of this season, start rooting for Aegon over Rhaenyra. There's almost like humor in all of the Aegon scenes now. There's almost comedic relief. And just like him having to grapple with the fact that he's not a good guy. And Larys is a scumbag and a disgusting human being But he gave it to him straight when he was like, you are not a good king. You had every opportunity and privilege to be, a good leader. You're even worse human being and man. And I was just like, damn, what an impressive scene. And the two of them together were actually kind of enjoyable to watch this season.
It was. And I wonder if anybody had ever confronted him in that way. My guess is no, nobody had ever, held a mirror up to him. Mm-hmm. And there's two things, that can happen when you get a mirror held up to you. You can look at it and actually see what's in there, or you can, look the other way and, call it a liar. And it seems like he was really able to have some reflection inside. And that to me shows growth and all of that.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
on the opposite side, Eamon has done the complete opposite, where he's almost become more gentle and more humble and less arrogant, which I wanted to get your thoughts. What do you think changed him?
Oh, man. So I think for both of them, right, like Aegon getting burned by Aemon trying to kill Aegon on their dragons in season 2 to take the throne. Aegon has to go through it, right? Like he is destroyed physically and mentally. He has lost everything. He is now disabled. He is now struggling to even get through the day. He thinks his dragon is dead. He's lost his kingship. And now he has to flee the kingdom as a commoner. And he's placed in the shoes of people like having to deal with latrine pits and, all of these things that are unbelievably humbling. Aemond, on the other hand, who I think, in my opinion, is one of my least favorite characters of the show. Aemond, Kristen Cole, Rhaenyra, unfortunately. Ormond, I hated Ormond so much. R.I.P. Good riddance. Aemond was wounded in battle. He's vulnerable as hell trying to take Harrenhal by himself. Alice Rivers saves him. He has to come to terms with he is not immortal, because Aemond has lived his entire life trying to get the attention and affection of his mother, right? It's very unhealthy Oedipus complex style. Aemond is in love with his mother. He wants her attention so badly. And to a fault, in a lot of ways, he doesn't know how to express himself in a healthy way. In season 2, he tried.
Classic middle child.
Yeah, exactly. He tries to get Helena to come fly off with him and fight. And she's like, she predicts his death in that moment and tells him how he's going to die. He so desperately wants to be his uncle. Every season he wants to be Daemon. And then finally he loses his dragon. He gets injured and he admits very vulnerably to Alice Rivers, I am nothing without my dragon. And I think that was the breaking point for him, and that realization, epiphany of oh, I'm not this formidable, strong leader warrior that my uncle is, because Daemon's out there, kicking ass in every situation with or without Caraxes.
Yeah.
And Aemond is not that guy. He's just not that guy. And he's had to present this very tough exterior most of his life because, like you said, middle child, he's not going to be the king. He doesn't really have a role. He's not getting the attention, and he's not being prepped to become a leader. He's kind of forgotten about. He's kind of cast to the side.
And Vhagar's is the biggest dragon, right? The most powerful, I think. And so where is Vhagar?
There's so many thoughts about that this season. Some people thought maybe Alice cast some sort of magic over Harrenhal where Aemon just couldn't see her. But then I see now that doesn't seem like that's the case after the finale yesterday. No telling. Yeah. I know how it ends for him. It'll be great in season 4, but that was not in the book. So I don't know. They've taken a lot of creative liberties in terms of not following the book. Corlys never gets kidnapped. He never gets his finger cut off. He never gets ransom. None of that stuff happens. So it's interesting when you have these special interests, right? And you're so connected to the story, when there's deviance to the storyline or it's a big change, especially for autistic people, it can be so disruptive for me to be wait, this is not what's supposed to be happening. They're not following the rules. This isn't how this was supposed to go down. And a lot of people have that similar experience for the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power TV show, where it's like, whoa, this, but so yeah, I don't know. I think another interesting character is Alicent. Probably could have been a very good ruler. Probably could have been a better queen than Rhaenyra. Was prepped to do so because her husband looked like a walking corpse 90% of the show.
Yeah.
But she's so manipulative and she's so conniving all the time to try to get to where she wants to go without ever saying it out loud, and being called on it a lot this season and being really humbled, almost basically becoming a hostage.
And one thing I can say for Rhaenyra is that she is a good mother. She has that mothering instinct, whereas Alicent does not. Her children are her property.
Yeah.
You can see that.
100%. I agree with that. Yeah. The scene where Rhaenyra is grieving Jace's death is, I hope that Emma D'Arcy wins all the awards. They deserve it all, because that was so intense and it was so emotional. And even the first episode of this series or season, when Jace has her locked in her room and she basically starts to have a meltdown in there, tearing things apart and screaming and slamming herself against the door.
Yeah.
And her protectors are all kind of looking around like, what is happening to this woman? But then you can see like she has zero control, despite the fact that she's supposed to be the queen and this leader. Everyone else is kind of pulling the strings.
Absolutely. I think that was just a really good moment to see just the human in her and that instinct of being a mother and wanting to protect, and that you can't, that's something you either have or you don't, and you can't get rid of it when you have it. And we never see that with Alicent. Never,
ever. Rhaenyra has experienced an enormous amount of grief throughout this show.
Yeah.
Her eldest son, dead. Her second eldest son, dead. Her father, dead. Passed up for the throne by having it really pulled out from under her by the high towers. Like, there's a lot of grief and there's a lot of unresolved trauma happening, while also trying to ascend and become this person that she's always dreamed and envisioned that she's supposed to be.
Yeah, betrayed by her best friend.
Yeah. Yep. Betrayed by her best friend, and her best friend, marrying her dad and not telling her until it happens. She's like, oh, by the way, I'm marrying your dad. And it's like, there's so much betrayal happening. So, she's such a complex character, but starting to fracture based on all the trauma, based on all the grief, can no longer hold it together, can no longer make good, rational, logic-based decision. Everything is based on emotion and impulse now.
Yeah, as I don't know that anyone could necessarily be logical during having undergone all that.
No, definitely not. Another storyline that I've really enjoyed is the Velaryon sons that go from being illegitimate, hidden away, shameful characters for Corlys and his infidelities, to now having a lot of airtime, working through a lot of their own family trauma and trying to navigate I've experienced all this trauma, but he's still my dad. And I still need to protect him. And I still need to figure out a way to save him, despite the fact that he's kind of wanted nothing to do with me my entire life.
Yeah, I'm sure that brings up a lot of things. Do you think that Corlys genuinely cares about them as sons, or is he just needing them to?
I think he does care about them. I think he does. I think he's lost so much so quickly, between losing his son, who is not actually dead, who just faked his own death to get away from their family, right?
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. So he lost his heir and son. He thinks he was murdered. He lost his daughter by dragonfire when she has that pregnancy loss.
Yeah.
Then his wife and his best friend dying in the war. He's got nothing left. And I think that, unfortunately, sometimes for people, it takes catastrophe to finally put things in perspective of these two were here this entire time.
Hmm.
And I never even gave them a moment's notice because I was so ashamed by my actions. And now I have to rely on them because I have nothing else.
Yeah, it's interesting how in with where Renera with her children, that shame and the being the bastard children and all of that. Isn't there a scene where he brings that up to her? Yeah, because she won't anoint his sons, but
Yeah.
she will her own.
Yeah. He's asking her to
Yeah,
legitimize them so that they can have his last name and
and
be
be
a part of the
lords.
family and become lords and get inheritances. And she refuses.
Yeah,
And she said, that will be a bad look on me. People are already questioning the legitimacy of my children. And he calls her out on it.
yeah,
But then there's a lot of people out there who would say like Corliss is a deadbeat dad who wanted nothing to do with his kids. And now because he needs something, he wants them to be legitimized. Although for 30 years, he didn't even pay attention to the fact that they were alive. So
yeah.
it's an interesting storyline for sure.
It is, and it's hard to know. It's hard to know because he had to lose everything before he needed them or before he wanted any kind of contact with them. So it's interesting.
Yeah. I think the whole universe is very cool. I think when you are really immersed in it, like you were mentioning, wanting to pull out a sword when you're frustrated. I've had those fantasies, throughout a lot of life where I'm like, damn, if I could just get swept away into Middle Earth, like, and not have to deal with the demands of existence and live in this fake fantasy world. I think it's very appealing to us, especially neurodivergent human beings.
Hmm. Absolutely. Even I would say yesterday was just a difficult day for me just in general with life. And I couldn't wait for the season finale to come on. And, I was
Yeah.
watching it and even having to pause and like explain a bit to my son. But when it was over, it's just like, it's almost just like this snap back to reality, like the
Yeah.
heaviness of reality. And I'll go, you just want to go back and watch another episode, but it's over. And that can be hard for a lot of people. It was hard for me.
It's really hard. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. I wrote an article on my Substack last week on the ADHD journeys about special interest loss, like the grief of a special interest coming to an end.
Yeah.
How a lot of times for a lot of people, special interests are not only sources of regulation, but connection and belonging and even dissociation when necessary. And I just finished reading the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. Do you know that series at all?
I've heard of it.
It's really a popular phenomenon right now. And there's 8 current books, 2 more to come. I read all 8 books in 1 month and I was just inhaling them. And when I was driving around Ireland a few weeks ago, I was just listening to the audiobook and I was like, cool, I can just zone out and, immerse myself into this world. And then it comes to a crashing halt and an end. And I'm like, the grief that you start to experience of something like that ending, like a show, a character, a book, a series, like something that is just abruptly taken away from you that you've like looked forward to, spent time around, connected with other people on. People don't always get the grief that comes with that, but it's really real.
Yeah, it is absolutely real. And I have a habit and I've always done this and I didn't realize that it was really connected to much of anything until recently. But when I read a book, nonfiction, I don't read the last chapter. I wait, I will save it until
Yeah.
I'm ready for that ending. And sometimes I'm never ready. So I have
Yeah.
a whole wall of just, almost finished books.
I love that. That's kind of beautiful, though. It's like you're savoring it, right? Like it means so much that you just can't allow yourself for it to be finished because
Yeah.
the simple act of like completion means that you have to then think about like what comes next. Like, what do I'm trying to replace the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I've been trying all these different books just to get a set. I'm like, I can't connect. I can't access it. I can't get into it. And I'm like, damn, I just lost that ability to like find that joy or that spark. So you had mentioned you had some questions that you wrote down that you might want to talk
Yeah.
about.
It's just a silly one.
Cool.
So if you were back then, what house would you belong to?
Oh man. Okay. I'll show everybody who's watching what this chair looks like. But this is a Targaryen chair. And I don't think I would want to be a part of the Targaryen house, though. I think I only bought this chair because I like the red and black, like dragon outline. I think I would want to be a part of House Stark. I just feel like the unrelenting loyalty to saying what you're going to do and doing what you say, even though it costs them an enormous amount throughout the series and the books and all the things. I think I would be House Stark. I just think I resonate the most with that. They also live in the north where it's colder, and I love being cold and I hate being hot. So like they're also like on this spread out land out there with like dire wolves and animals and all these old witchy like beliefs, and they're kind of forgotten about in a lot of ways. And I think that would be really nice. That would be really appealing.
Yeah.
What about you?
So yeah, I think also I would definitely be a House Stark. However, if I could pick, I would definitely like to be House Tyrell. The where
Really?
where it's all peace and
Mhm.
it's in a beautiful garden
Yeah.
and everything is pretty and nobody fights. I mean, at the end, of course, but you just live in this beautiful land of Lala. So that's where I would definitely like to be. But I
Yep.
think if I was like really there, I would definitely be a Stark.
I like that. Tyrell's an interesting answer. Definitely not known to be warriors, just known to be like wine merchants and merchants in general.
Yeah.
Olenna Tyrell, the older matriarch of the family, is such a fantastic character.
Yeah.
I can't. What is the actress's name? Do you know off the top of your head?
I cannot remember.
She's no longer alive, but her name was, who was she played by? Diana Rigg, R.I.P. What a legend. Always constantly calling Cersei out on things. Always calling like dumb idiot men out on things. Yeah, she was great. Loved
And
her so
she
much.
had so much money that
Yep.
everyone needed her and everybody needed her, to be nice to her or whatever.
Yep.
And she could see right through it.
Yep.
But she, would give them money if she, what were they
Yeah.
going to do for her? But
Yeah.
I loved her. And what is it? Marjorie was her granddaughter.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That storyline, I don't love that house. I loved like the Stark storyline. I loved I like the Targaryen storyline. There's a story there that they need to make a show, and I'm sure they will, because the Game of Thrones universe is just exploding right now. But they need to make the story of Ned Stark and Robert Baratheon rebelling against the Mad King and how the Targaryen dynasty comes to an end in that war, and how Jon Snow is born, and really the cause of everything that gets destroyed. And it's interesting because in the House of the Dragon, they're constantly going back to that prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire. The White Walkers are going to come. They're going to destroy the world. The prince who was promised needs to be the one who saves it. And every Targaryen thinks they are the prince who was promised. It's like Rhaenyra is calling herself the princess that was promised. Daenerys calls herself the princess that was promised. Several of the other Targaryens, but it ends up being Jon Snow, someone who ends up being, bastard born and illegitimized and cast aside and disrespected and like humbled, and inevitably becomes that person. So I like that storyline a lot. And I like seeing the little guys become heroes. I know you don't really like the Lord of the Rings or aren't as familiar with the Lord of the Rings universe, but Gandalf is always like pushing the hobbits out the door to go on adventures. And people always ask him like, why are you choosing these small creatures that don't have any special abilities to carry such a burden? And he'll always say that he thinks that power comes from smaller, everyday people just trying to do what's right instead of like the hero saving the world. So I've always loved that mentality.
Yeah, I love that too. And I love that Jon Snow did everything that he did without the name Targaryen attached to him. Nobody, even he didn't know it. He was just genuinely being who he was supposed, or who he was, a good person and doing what's right and all of that. And that led him down that
And then the writers destroyed the entire season 8, and everyone who waited years to see it unfold. And then Jon Snow basically just said, I don't want it 100 times, and nothing happened.
Yeah.
That's another thing that people don't talk about, though, is like when people are looking forward to these things and they don't turn out the way you want them to, there can be such an enormous amount of collective community grief, frustration, anger, sadness. I can think of a lot of shows that have ended really poorly that people were really invested in. Dexter. Did you ever watch Dexter?
I don't think I've watched it from start to finish, but I've seen episodes.
Awful finale. Like another situation where like people are like, that could be the worst moment in television history. I would argue that Bran becoming king after all is said and done is one of the worst moments in television history.
Yeah.
And it's all of that built up anticipation and all of that.
Sopranos. I don't know if you watched that. Horrible ending.
Horrible.
Seinfeld. Another horrible ending. There's a ton of them.
It's really hard when it means that much to you and then it comes crashing down, because then you're left to pick up the pieces and like figure out, okay, how do I get back into a place where I can feel that way again? And I think for a lot of neurodivergent humans that can be a lot of life of like, how do I get back into a place where I feel connected to something, excited for something, like it brings me a sense of community, belonging, and it just sensory soothes. It regulates my nervous system. And then once it's gone, it's really sad.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, when they experience that, they're more reluctant to indulge into a special interest or a community or something, because with that, knowing that it may not last forever can be really hard to just immerse yourself into it.
Well said. Yeah. It's almost like, why try? Like, why participate? And then if you throw into the mix, for those of you who might who might also have PDA, like I was talking about, it can be really hard to enter into something that other people are excited for you to enter into. It's almost like your nervous system puts up this force field and is like, nope, not today.
A lot of expectation.
Yeah. So you have to really creatively get into those things. Like I'm so grateful that I found the Game of Thrones universe. I love the books. I love the shows. I love talking about it. And it took me 7 years longer than it probably should have, because I just could not let myself do it.
Yeah.
And that's the story of my life for a lot of things.
You have to decide when the time's right.
Exactly.
But I have a question.
Go for it.
What is your favorite dragon or most beautiful dragon?
That's a great question, because I was actually, see, this is how I associate everything. Everything has to live in association. So like, I was actually just talking to a tattoo artist about getting another tattoo. And I was like, I really want to get one of the dragons from House of the Dragon. I'm wearing a dragon t-shirt right now, but it's also Smaug from The Hobbit. So I was trying to think, like, because she asked me, she's like, okay, that's fine. What do you want it to look like? Who do you want it to be? And I'm like, oh shit, I don't know.
They're also different.
They are also different. I think I like Caraxes the most because he gets the most airtime. He's the most important besides Vhagar in the show. So, but I don't love the look of like the really long neck situation. Love Moondancer, like Helena's dragon. You only see it one time. Yeah. Super cool looking. I also really like Daeron's dragon, Tessarion, the little blue one that's chained up right now.
That was my favorite. And I was really blown away whenever I saw him. I saw somebody online said he's an indoor dragon. He's a little house dragon.
I love, like, they put a lot of thought and intention and detail into the dragons this season, where they were like, some of them that were coupled were like showing affection towards one another, or like when one of them is like drinking water out of the pond. You're seeing it makes it feel like there's so much connection. And it's unfortunate, for those of you watching, because the end doesn't end well, right? Like everything gets wiped off the map, and it's really hard when you know that that's coming. Like it's almost anticipatory grief.
Yeah, I think when the dragons fight each other is one of the hardest things that for me to watch. You feel so connected to them. And, even Sheep Stealer being just a very wild, mean dragon and so
Yep.
ugly, so
Yep.
ugly.
Yep.
Yeah, like you don't even like looking at him, but
Nope.
seeing him get hurt, he and
Yeah.
abandoned
Yep.
by his rider that what was he
Yep.
like 80?
Yeah.
80 years to find a rider and she just abandoned him.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. You're right. It brings up a lot of emotion. That like dragon fight that happened last episode was like, it was a pretty emotionally charged event. And it's so fascinating because like when you watch the actors and actresses, all they're doing is sitting on like this mechanical saddle, and they're having to act out like being on this dragon. And I just think it's cool because they've started to put details into it, like Damon's dragon when he's on Caraxes, they have his sword attached to the saddle next to him like as a permanent fixture, so it always looks like it's there. And it's just, the details have been really cool this season, and the cinematography has been really well done. I will say, like, I wish they handled certain storylines differently. I'm excited for next season being the finale. I know what's going to happen. A lot of you are going to be really sad. I recommend reading the books, or you're going to have a lot of heartbreak when season 4 comes out. But it's also, I think there's going to be a lot of awesome endings for a lot of these characters who we've grown to either really like or really, really despise.
Yeah. So it gets four seasons.
4 seasons. Yep. It'll come to an end next season. They said they're already halfway done filming. So that we might get it sooner than 2 years, which would be great. And that's another thing, is like when we know it's happening a year or 2 years down the road, you're like, oh my God, how am I going to hold myself over till then? And for me, it'll be like rewatching Game of Thrones, rewatching Knights of the Seven Kingdom, rewatching House of the Dragon, and then rereading the books and listening to the audiobooks. And that will be a way to constantly stay connected to this thing that just helps me in a lot of different ways in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. This is going to be hard. What was the saddest death? Game of Thrones and House of Dragons. So all of it.
Oh, man. Okay.
It's a tough one.
That is so tough. I think for me, the saddest death, there's so much death in Game of Thrones where you're like, every character you like is dead within 4 seasons. You're just like, I've seen GIFs or memes before of like, just started watching Game of Thrones. I love Ned Stark. Can't wait to see what he does for 8 seasons. And you're like, yeah. I think the saddest death for me was the Hound. Like, he protects Arya. They march into the city. Daenerys is burning everything down.
Yeah.
And he says, if you come with me, you will die. You do not want to live like this. Like, get out of here. And she's just like, Sandor, thank you so much. And she runs off. And then he dies, fighting his brother, which seemed like the inevitable ending for him the whole time. So I think that was the saddest one for me.
Yeah,
what about you?
I think that's definitely one of the saddest ones for me too. I want to say, just maybe because it's fresh, it was Helena's death.
Yeah, Helena's is sad for sure.
It was sad. Yeah. And maybe that's just because it's fresh. I think if I went back and watched Game of Thrones, there would be a whole lot that would come up. There were so many.
Death is really sad, actually. You know what? That might be second for me, is Rhaenys in season 2, when she's like, she goes off to war, she fights Vhagar and Sunfire. Aemon burns Aegon and Sunfire. Meleys and Rhaenys are like fighting. And there's this moment in that scene where they could get away. And Rhaenys looks at Meleys the dragon and she's like, continue fighting. And the dragon looks at her like, knowing that they're about to die. And then they show her like just falling backwards off the dragon and dying that way as Vhagar kills yet another person and character and dragon. And that was super sad because she was an awesome, awesome character.
Yeah, I really liked her. And she, like Rhaenyra, could have been queen if she had, fought for it, but she didn't. And she stayed loyal, and
she stayed loyal. She was she always had Rhaenyra's back despite a lot of conflict. And she was just she was the epitome for them of like a very strong dragon rider warrior. So she was a hell of a character. And that was that was a death actually where I did shed some tears where I was like, damn, that was really emotional. And then, Corliss loses his shit and just disappears off the grid forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that one. What was the hardest? This kind of maybe goes into that, but the hardest scene to watch.
There's a lot of scenes in Game of Thrones that are hard to watch. Like,
True.
there are a lot of violent, over the top scenes where like they're killing babies. The red wedding scene is unbelievably challenging to watch, where like the whole Stark family gets mutinied against.
Yeah.
Those scenes will always stand out to me and to anyone watching the show, I imagine. And House of the Dragon, I really, really didn't like a lot of the characters in the first season. They were just cringy to me. I like had a visceral reaction whenever like Otto Hightower, I really despised him so much. There's a scene in Game of Thrones where Theon has to like cut off someone's head after he takes over Winterfell, but he can't do it because he's not strong enough. He's just like hacking away, and like eventually it's just disgusting.
Yeah.
There are a lot of scenes like that, and they're hard to watch.
I think anything that involved Ramsay Bolton was incredibly hard to watch, especially when he was torturing Theo.
Yeah. Theon has a great redemption arc in that show. Mm-hmm. He's actually a death that is very sad to me, where he's like protecting Bran towards the end when the Night King is coming. And eventually the Night King gets there and Bran just looks at him and he's like, Theon, you are a good man. And that was like, for him, he was like, okay, finally I can be at peace. So that was also a powerful scene too.
It was. I think Theon, just his entire storyline was hard to watch. It just seeing him be taken and kidnapped and tortured and seeing psychologically what that did to him, just how broken and traumatized, absolutely traumatized. And then to see him slowly, reemerge, but you could tell he never was the same. And he shouldn't have been the same as he was, because he was, terrible in a way, but just not even, just almost a shell of a human.
And the only reason he ends up in that position, right, is because his dad is an awful, evil man who is like, I will basically never love you. And the only way I'm even going to respect you a little bit is if you betray your best friend and you go do this thing and, you become everything that you're not in order for me to finally show you affection. And there's so much of that in the show, of just like horrible, traumatizing parenting that leads to unfortunate results and unfortunate, traumatic history that they're all dealing with to navigate. Like Tyrion is another example, like is just treated so poorly by so many people because he's smaller. He's, going to be constantly looked down on. He's a little person.
And his mother died giving birth to him. So the whole family
he's blamed
hates him
for it. And they're like, you killed your mom. He's like, and his dad is just the worst. He's the fucking worst. So Tyrion, Peter Dinklage was amazing in that role, and he won so many awards for that role, and he deserved every single one of them. I think he was phenomenal. He was like the glue for the show in a lot of ways. Yeah,
that was amazing. And see, he was a very interesting character for me too, because one side you want to love him and you see him, but then he also does some kind of twisted things, but you kind of understand why he's doing those twisted things.
100%. Yeah,
exactly.
Loved him. There's a scene where he's being, he's on trial, right, for killing Joffrey, which he didn't do. And he just goes on this rant of like, I didn't do it, but I wish I did. If I had enough poison, I would give it to all of you. And it's just it's so powerful. It's so good. So, that was, always loved him a lot. So lots of characters that I connected to and lots of characters that I really enjoyed watching. And I'm probably going to go rewatch them again as soon as we're off of this thing. So
I think I loved it. my kids are going back to school this week. And so I was always so mindful about watching Game of Thrones with them around because they did walk in a few times and I'm like, no, you just never know what's going to pop up. But now,
No.
with them definitely being at school, I know I'll have a little bit of free time.
Well, Mandi, I just want to thank you for coming on here and having this conversation. For those of you still listening, I know this is a long episode, but I think that's what happens when two people connect over shared interests. And I think that's what allows us to feel human. And even if the DSM says that some of us, like autistic people, have social deficits, and I would reframe that as differences, when we are able to connect and be our true unmasked selves and talk about our special interests, I think there's nothing more illuminating or powerful or magical in the world. So I just really want to appreciate and say thank you for coming on and having this conversation. I never got to talk about Game of Thrones on my podcast.
Oh, and I am just beyond thrilled. I've been looking forward to this for so long since you set the date, and just I've been giddy about it all day. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything you want to share with the audience? I don't know what you've got going on in your life and your world with stuff, but we're going to link it in the show notes. But when is your book coming out? I know we talked about this the last time you were on here.
I'm still working on it a bit.
Okay.
It's been hard to find, it's hard to figure out what direction I exactly want to go in. So
I get that.
Yeah, the core, I guess, is there. But I am going to be speaking at the CHAD conference in December in Baltimore. So that's exciting. But I have I am still seeing clients for coaching, executive functioning coaching. And we have I have my therapy that's available to Texas residents.
Sweet. And we will link all of that in the show notes so that everybody has access to that. Mandi's an incredible resource, especially for those of you who are struggling with perimenopause, ADHD, the overlap with any hormonal imbalance. I just think such a amazing resource in the community. And your Instagram it's ADHD menopause. Is that?
No. ADHD menopause therapist.
ADHD menopause therapist. So check that out. Give her a follow. A ton of great, valuable information there too. And Mandi, thank you so much for coming on and making the time.
Thank you for having me.
And to everyone listening to the Neurodivergent Entrepreneur podcast, episodes are out on Wednesdays and are all major platforms and YouTube. You can download, subscribe, share. Check out my Substack, ADHD Journeys, and we'll see you next week.